Hello and welcome to At the Leadership Table with retired Major General Jim Hoyer. Oftentimes people hear the word leader and they think only of political leaders, but leaders come in many forms, and that's worth exploring. I'm Jim Hoyer, born and raised in West Virginia, a husband, a father, a new grandfather, and a retired military leader, serving for over 40 years in public leadership for our state and nation. Now, the most important mission I have going forward is to educate, motivate, and empower our next generation of leaders. At the leadership table with us today is Delegate Joe Statler. He's a member of the West Virginia House of Delegates representing the 77th District and is chairman of the important House Education Committee. Throughout his career, Joe has worked to represent the people of West Virginia. Joe is a good friend and a dedicated public servant. We've worked a lot together on military, veteran, and National Guard issues, as well as emergency management and emergency medical services issue. And Joe is a significant advocate in the state legislature for all of those groups and all of the people that serve the people of West Virginia. And Joe, it's a pleasure to have you at the leadership table with us today.
Well, I appreciate you having me in, and I always appreciate keeping these issues out in the front light because people don't really realize how important these people are to them until they need them and they're not there. Then they say, where are they? Well, it costs money to be ready, and it keeps it. And I will say that now I serve the 77th District since redistricting. My district is 77 now instead of 51, but I still serve the people of West Virginia.
Absolutely, and I thank you for the work that you do. And Joe, we're going to start out by asking you the same first question we ask all of our guests. Please share with us a standout moment when you learned something really important about leadership.
You know, I thought about that, and that's a hard one to answer because you learn every day. If you're a true leader, things changes and you change and adapt to that, and that's part of leadership. But I would say it goes clear back to high school, believe it or not. And I've been out of school this year, 55 years out of high school. But it started back when I was in the FFA and the Ag program, and Robert C. Beach was my advisor at the time. And he got me into parliamentary procedure, got me into leadership. I always served as a class officer. And so I thought about it. I do believe that a person is born a leader. It's how you develop those skills that makes a difference. So I think the true moment is all through basically my career from high school on.
Joe, you're someone that people can relate to because of your genuine care and concern for the people of West Virginia and the district you represent. You also have a focus on rural communities, of which our state is mostly made up of. What are some of the things that people, constituents, and families are telling you are important to them today?
What's really important to the folks is the same things that's always been out there. I will tell you that. Roads, education, those are always top on the list that folks have. Even if you don't have a child in school, you're concerned about the education that is being delivered. But my biggest concern is the folks, how they interact with you now. People just do not trust anyone from government. It's in government, whether you're a politician or whether you're working for the government system. The trust has eroded to a point that's just bad. They think that everybody's in it for the money, that nobody's out there genuinely working for the betterment of the people in the state of West Virginia. And that really troubles me. And that's something that we have to overcome. We have to build a respect and a working relationship between both the state elected officials, the workers, and the people so that we all are singing off the same page in the hymn book, because without that, we're just going to keep spinning in muddy water.
And Joe, I think that's a great point, and trust truly is something that we need to continue to bring back. And West Virginia is a good place to start that national movement to bring back trust. Joe, you and I worked together over my years as Adjutant General on a number of projects to support the National Guard, to support and improve the emergency management system. But one of the things you've taken on recently and been the true state advocate for is the emergency medical system, and particularly all of our EMS workers that do that thankless job every day and only get attention when there's an emergency and they're needed. Tell our listeners a little bit about the challenge out there now in the emergency medical system and what's going on in the state of West Virginia.
Well, it is an emergency that's going on. People don't realize that out there. We've lost several systems across the state of West Virginia. It's a little bit set up originally as it was with the volunteer fire companies. It was volunteer ambulance services. That quickly eroded because of the constraints, the training, and everything that has to be put on. And I would predict to you that the volunteer fire system as we know it today in a few years will not be the same volunteer fire system. It's going to change with time, just as the EMS has. But what has happened, it's went even deeper. Now the volunteer services for most part are out, but now the paid systems can no longer stay running. It's cost, what people don't realize is the time and the money that's required to keep those services prepared, ready to roll at a moment's notice to go out there. They're on 24-hour calls 7 days a week. That costs money. And if they don't make a run, then there's continually doing things. And then you get to the fact is, how many people wants to train for that now? It's not the best paying job in the world. The medical field is a good field to get into, and you see a lot of people making great money. Unfortunately, our EMS workers are not the ones making big bucks on that, and they're just sitting there waiting. And then you get to the mental health side of it. Can you imagine what they see? Go running into a fire somewhere, or go to a car wreck where a young child has been thrown through the window of a vehicle and laying there maybe dead. You got the parents still alive, the mother that's searching for that baby, and you have to comfort that mother and look at her, and you don't want to tell her that your child is not going to be there. That all has to pay heavily. The fire, where the 2-year-old child's in the fire and does not get out of there, but you have to go in and bring that child out. I just can't imagine how that would play into your mind and into your heart, how long that would stay with you. You know, as a general, you've seen things that you have to try to find a way to put it back. And people don't realize this goes on every day in the state of West Virginia out there. But these people, they're a different breed. They try to make themselves the superhero that they can live with that. And they can just ignore it and make it go away. It's going to catch up with them sooner or later. And that's why it was so important that the bill that we put forward this year, that I made sure that up to $1 million was set aside just for the mental health issues of our first responders, so that they can, and I was smart enough, I hope, that I didn't tell them how to use that money, how to set it, because I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take to help those people. All I know is they need help, and I want to make sure the money's there available for that.
Well, Joe, let's talk about that legislation a little bit more. First, I think it's important for our listeners to understand that this is something that's taken you a couple of years to get through the legislative process. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but talk specifically about the components of the bill. And I know that from my experience in working with you, you were focused on not just the emergency medical service workers, but also the infrastructure challenges that go along with a rural state trying to continue to provide services. So talk a little bit about some of those things that you addressed in this piece of legislation. That congratulations and thanks for your continued effort. You finally got through the process.
Well, I was very fortunate, and I would say that I was attending the WVU football game with Pitt, and just by happenstance, Chairman Vernon Criss was there. The greatest victory that day was not WVU beating Pitt, I will tell you. It was my chance to sit there at that ball game and beat on Chairman Criss's ear saying, this is the year we have to find the money. And he agreed to a couple things that we could do to start working forward. And I can tell you that ball game that day is where the major part of that bill basically was moved to go forward. So people that thinks it's a 60-day session are far wrong. But we had planned, we worked on it, but you're right, there's components of that bill that I clearly wanted in there. I know that the prior bills, and I know that the EMS workers out there is a little upset with me because the one thing that I removed, and I fully believe it is not the state's function or job to determine what the scale of the pay is going to be in salary enhancements. Again, I agree, they need more money, but that's not the way to do it. So we functioned the bill to put it so that they could buy equipment. They can buy another ambulance they needed. They can put the stuff in the ambulance it takes, the medical supplies. They can use the money for training. They can use it for gas. And we all know what that is today. So
Right.
all this money can be used for that. And at the same time, then they can take that money these agencies had that they was going to use for that. They can use that for the salaries. And that way, it's not the state doing it. We also put a component in there that I would have liked to have it dollar for dollar saying that if you take this money as a county, then you have to match that money some way. I even went as far as to say, I don't care if you rob a bank to get it. I do care, but I said that how you get the money is not important to me. Well, it finally came down to the part that ended up being 30 cents on the dollar. Not where I wanted it to be. I thought we could do a little better, take 12 million, make it 24. But you know, when it comes to the waning hours of the session, sometimes you don't choke on the mountain. You just go ahead and chew off a bite of the mobile and move on. And so that ended up being 30 cents that they have to match, which is very doable, I believe, for the counties, whether it's in an excess levy, whether in Montague County. We're very fortunate to have WVU Health and Vandalia or Mont General helps to subsidize the pay into the ambulance service. And I don't believe people realizes that out there.
Right.
They put quite a bit of money into this ambulance service into this county. They can use that money as a match coming out of Montague County. So that is in there. The components training. You know, before we actually bought in the original when it was just money. This is permanent funding. This is why it's historic. This is the first time in the state of West Virginia that we have ever set aside permanent funding for the EMS system.
And I think that's a great point for our listeners. And, you know, Vernon is a good friend. He and I go back to the 1980s when he first came into the legislature. And like you, as a dedicated public service servant, you guys did something really unique in this process in that you used some lottery money and other, as you said, dedicated permanent funding streams. So it's not about appropriating this money every year, it's dedicated. So I think it's important for our listeners to understand a little bit more about what you all did and what that means.
We did. We removed the money out of the lottery. So as the year goes forward, and I think since 1988, there's only been one occasion that they didn't have money left over at the end of the year after they pay out everything and do all the responsibilities. So we took that money that is left over out of the lottery, not the excess. It is out of the lottery. And I would say this, it is the bottom of the list. There's other things that's out there that comes out of that same fund. we took 12 million of that money and earmarked that. So I'm 99.9% sure that that money will be available, but I would want to caution all of them. I did the EMS systems out there that don't always bank upon that, because there could be a time, I don't see it happening, that folks don't go out and gamble and the money's not there. That seems to be a thing. It's growing. It's not getting less. And so it's just a permanent funding that's available to help this. And that's why the lottery was actually started. When it was started, was for, if it had veterans, schools, safety of the people of West Virginia. So it fell right in line with what the lottery's original purpose was.
And you have, I think, more that you want to do going forward. It's not just ending with this bill. You've got more that you want to continue with.
Oh yeah, 12 million is just a drop in the bucket is what is needed out there. And actually there was some other bills that was passed this year that really helped them, even down to the billing. What people probably doesn't realize, when that ambulance comes and picks you up, and I know it can get expensive, and insurances, and if it doesn't pay, but at the same time, do you know that every time they make a run, they lose about $540, regardless of the money they get? When that ambulance runs, on an average, it's losing $540 per run. So those are the costs that's out there that people don't realize it's over. So you're exactly right. There's much more that needs to be done. We also allowed, for the first time, EMS workers now can get in the state retirement system. That was never allowed before. And just think about that. These folks dedicate a life to saving people in the state of West Virginia, and we're just now getting around to saying, you know what? Once you are done serving, and some of them serve forever, I don't know, but when you finally retire, we need a system there that money is available to help them just the same as everybody else. They can finally now enter into those systems that's there. They can, like I said, the billing, the insurance companies and stuff, it's up to 200%. It basically is the insurance agencies, you know, they worked with everybody to come up with a workable number that everybody could live with. Nobody wanted to go there, but we have to, and that's what's part of the system. You've worked the system forever. It's not where you start, it's where you finish that counts.
Right. And I think it was important to have you on today to talk about this, because as you pointed out, you lose $540 every time the ambulance makes a run. People expect the ambulance to be there when they need it, but we've got to continue to educate people and our fellow citizens that we've got to figure out how to pay for that, because if we don't, the ambulance is not going to be there when we need it.
It absolutely will not, because you just can't continue to lose money forever. These ambulances are now pushing probably up to close to $1 million for a fully equipped ambulance. The stretcher now, I believe, is like 35 grand, something like that, to load to put the people in the ambulances. And that all adds in training again. We can't get enough EMTs out there, and thank God that these EMTs and paramedics, some of them decides that they want to go on into healthcare, and they want to become doctors or they want to become nurses and go in. So can you fault a person for wanting to do more to help people? And that's what they're doing. They're looking out for someone else that's out there. So it is a system that has a lot broken. And what people don't realize, when a local ambulance service shuts down and no longer in service, they think, well, somebody else will do it. Well, you know, the trouble is that keeps happening. These ambulance services has to stretch out more and more and go further, which makes the time, how long it takes them to respond, to get there. And we're talking about, you know, in the case of a heart attack. And thank God we have also backing up the ambulance and the EMS systems are our firefighters and our volunteer fire companies. Because I've said before, you know, the local fire companies a lot of times may get there before the ambulance gets there. And if I'm down with a heart attack, I don't care what you do. Jump on my chest if you have to. Get my heart working. And these volunteer fire companies, they also have trained, most of them, trained EMTs that's there. And so it's a system that works hand in hand. But again, when one component of that breaks down, it weakens a whole chain of what's going on. So we really got to do a harder effort at looking, and I applaud Preston County for what they're doing, looking at putting, that's tough. Those three commissioners are putting out there because they've tried to get a levy, an excess levy passed, have not been able to get it done up there. And it's clearly stated in the law from 1975, it's their responsibility for this. And they're taking the responsibility and saying, okay, I'm just going to say this is how much money that you have to give. And I applaud them for that, because that's going to be political suicide.
Yeah, they're stepping up and doing the right thing, not the politically expedient thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Joe, I've known you for years. I know in working with you that you're really focused on family, and family is what drives your public service. So as we close out the show today, tell me what you envision for the future of West Virginia and what you want to see for your family in West Virginia going forward.
West Virginia, that's one of the things that we're known for, is how much we stand together. You know, for all the things we look at, and I would say in my lifetime I can see that the family structure has changed, and I do believe it is also weakening, and we got to turn that around and get that family structure back more. It's even when you go into child care, you can remember and you know that child care wasn't the issue it is today, because grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, somebody stepped up when the child needed some additional help. That's not the case now. It's not as easy as it was at one time. Child care is another thing. It's on the radar screen. It's got to happen. So if there's anything that I could say that I would love to see in West Virginia, you can't legislate telling family you have to be a family, you have to be loving, you have to, the first responsibility when that baby is born is that child. You have to give up some of the things that you were doing in life that changes. Your main focus has got to be that child, and it's your responsibility to raise that child in a safe, loving environment and give them everything that you can give them out there. And I believe that we've got to turn that around in West Virginia and get that back to where it's more of a norm than what it is right at this point in time.
Lead by example. Joe, I thank you for your commitment to the state of West Virginia, your public service, and taking on important issues in education and emergency management, emergency medical services. And thank you for joining us at the leadership table today.
Thank you very much, sir. You're the one that has given a life for the state of West Virginia and what you've done, more so than I.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. This has been At the Leadership Table with retired Major General Jim Hoyer. Did you know you can now find me on social media at RMG Hoyer? That's HOYER, or email me at rmgjameshoyer@gmail.com.